Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our talk, Business DSLs for Web Applications. I'm Jan Kühnlein, this is my colleague, Holger Schill. We are both working for Itemis, and we are both committers to XText and Extend. In the next half an hour, we are going to make a use case of Business DSLs and show you how to implement them based on the Eclipse platform and XText. So first of all, what is a Business DSL? DSL, I hope no one is expecting something about telephones here. DSL is a domain-specific language, and a Business DSL is a domain-specific language that covers the business aspect of an application. So you'll unlikely find something like entity or service, but likely something like contract or other things in a Business DSL. So Business DSLs are written, well, artifacts in Business DSLs are written by business experts rather than technicians. And to be a DSL, of course, it makes a lot of sense if such a DSL is parsable and machine readable, so it should be formal in a way. Example for such business rules, business DSLs appear in all kinds of enterprise applications. So typical examples are rules, business rules, configurations, workflows, and all the like. And typically these things are not available at compile time, but used in the running application to configure it. So there's a certain, maybe a certain execution constraint on that as well. To understand now the difference between this Business DSLs to other DSLs, have a look at who is using them. So the technical DSLs are mainly used by software developers. These guys are used to IDEs. We like our Eclipse or IntelliJ or whatever. And that's a huge application, very complex, has a lot of buttons, scares many people off, but makes us very powerful and helps us getting our things done. And, well, most of us love text, because code is text, and all our tooling environment is built around managing text somehow, text editors, versioning systems, text merge, all that stuff. On the other hand, the business user is a bit different. So what do you think Business DSL are mostly written in which thing, in which tool? Excel, yes, of course. Most business DSLs appear in Excel. Well, the most powerful tool in the world, it seems to be, because, well, it's used for everything. But they also use web-based tools, okay? And more companies say that we should use a little bit less Excel because it's not formal. We cannot really work with what comes out of these Excel documents. We should have a better understanding at what we're doing. And usually a business expert doesn't care that much about coding. They want a GUI. So what are the challenges? Well, the first challenge is not everything is a table. I've seen everything in Excel, like this graphical diagram. And people use it for all kinds of purposes. And it doesn't just fit any use case. So it may not be the best platform to build your Business DSLs on. The second thing is that not all GUIs cut it. That means it's not the most convenient way to configure things. If you look at that one, the upper one, that's configuring a business rule. And this is kind of a form to configure an expression. And it has lots of buttons and lots of controls. And if you click on the plus buttons, you get even more controls. And if you have a really complex expression, it will fill more than the entire screen with these kind of confusing things. And you really lose context. You will not understand what's going on. And the other thing is, well, in the modeling community, unfortunately, that's still very popular. Trees. That's also not very good if you have very detailed models. And the last issue is, not every config is declarative. That means you cannot configure everything with XML. Well, you can do a lot of things in XML and in languages like that, but sometimes you need more power. You need expressions, you need to calculate something. And yeah, in many web applications you see things like that. You have a text control like here for Jenkins. And you can insert some kind of shell script there without any editor support. So That makes you powerful, but is no tooling at all. And other application may be home automation. If you have a smart home, you want to configure your radiator to run when the curtain is open and the TV is off or something like that. And these rules can become quite complex, and you may want to have a little bit more than just a GUI for that. So there are business DSLs which are more complex, which cannot be handled in the traditional ways. Well, we're in Eclipse. Holger and I, we are XText committers. And I hope you all know XText. Do you know XText? Who knows XText? OK. So XText allows you to create domain-specific languages, DSLs, very easily. You write a grammar, you run the code generator, and you get Eclipse tooling for free. A text editor with all the rich features and that stuff. But yeah, how does that? That is, of course, not very good for business DSLs, because you don't want to give them, business users, a complete Eclipse, OK? We've tried it a couple of times. You at least have to strip it down to a reasonable amount. But still, yeah, that's maybe not the best idea. But here's the good news. In 2.9, XText 2.9, and that's going to appear next week, we will offer, in addition to Eclipse-based tooling, integration in IntelliJ IDEA and for web applications. And that is cool, because web-based tools, well, business developers are used to web-based tools, and they can use a web widget, a text widget, which runs actually in XText editor with all the rich features. And that could bridge that gap of the complicated business DSLs. So that makes XText a business framework. This is the architecture. So you may have seen already our prototypes on that. I'm not sure who was there last year. We had that robot demo that also ran a XText editor in a text widget. It's not the same anymore. It's a complete rewrite. And the main difference is we no longer need Eclipse on the server. Okay, we have a very small, very thin layer with a servlet engine and some generated XText services, asynchronous communication via JSON, and of course Java-based widget, JavaScript-based widget in the web browser that runs the editor. Yeah, so it's really a thin architecture, very lightweight. No more Eclipse on the server. We run it, in fact, in a simple Jetty, which is, yeah, you can run that from Eclipse, and it's very easy and lightweight. The communication protocols uses either delta information, document changes, or the entire document. Well, you have to decide whether you want to store the state on the server or not. That could be an issue in some scenarios, in others not. And you can also decide where you want to store the documents you create there. A really great feature is single sourcing. So there's a new wizard, and you set a couple of marks there. Holger will show that in a minute. And you just get, from the same grammar that you use for Eclipse plugins, you get the web tooling. And not only that, there are a couple of services you might want to customize in Eclipse. And like content assist, hovers, whatever. We extracted them to a separate plugin, made them independent of Eclipse, and made all the implementations use that platform-neutral implementation, such that you can have your configurations in a new plugin and have them in Eclipse, in IDEA, in the web browser by the same click. It also integrates with Gradle and Maven. OK, we're now switching to demo. Holger's taking over.
Thank you. OK, now I'm allowed to speak. I have the tie. So let's come to the demo. I would like to go quickly through the wizard. So it's pretty easy. What you have to do is you have to use the XText project wizard, and I will stay with the defaults. But what's new is the next one. I can just click Web Integration, Gradle, Finish. We are about to go. So we have to generate something out of the grammar. That takes a while. And we have to download something. That's not good.
Do you have an internet connection?
Yeah, I will have it in a minute.
So those of you who have already used XText know that Antler license issue. Antler 3, the parser generator we use behind those curtains, is not Eclipse IP approved. That's why we have to ship it separately. It's safe. It has a public domain license, but they could not really.
It's already downloaded?
Yeah, it's ready now. Yeah.
So what we can do now is we can start a Java application, and what is going on there is running Jetty. And we are pointed to localhost 8080. Let's prove that out. Yay, we have an editor for our example language, but just kidding, that's not really the demo. I just wanted to show that how easy it is when you just stay with the defaults. Besides downloading the parser generator, it's really fast.
You messed it up?
Yeah, I messed it up, sorry for that. Yeah, what we would like to show you is an example with state machines. So let's get rid of all this stuff. We don't need it anymore. So now seriously, let's go through the wizard. So you already know, those of you that already have used XText, that we need a project name, and we need a language name. So far, nothing new. And what you need is a file extension. I would say it's state. But what's new is the next page. And you will see there we have the possibility to use the Eclipse plugin. That means you get a UI plugin that you can use inside of Eclipse, and you get content assist and all that fancy stuff. But for now, we don't need that. We want to concentrate on web integration. And Jan already mentioned we have generic IDE support. That means it will generate a separated plugin where you can put in stuff that is UI independent. You can reuse that for different platforms. But if we want to use the web integration, there is one problem, because that will only work with Gradle or Maven. And I'm in favor of Maven, so just let's go with that. We have the possibility to choose, but Eclipse will not work in this scenario.
Eclipse is the plain PDE build.
Right.
Doesn't make sense with that.
So what we end up with is a bunch of plugins, and of course the grammar is shown to us. So what's new is we got those this IDE plugin, that's new, and we get a web plugin. And because we are using Gradle and Maven in behind, we have a parent plugin. So let's concentrate on things we can show. So I would like to just copy the complete grammar that I prepared, and let's go through what it is about. So it's a state machine example. So our root node is a state machine that has two lists. One list holds signals, second one holds states. A signal could be an input signal or an output signal. That depends on the first keyword that is used. And after that, it has another keyword, signal, and a name. And you may notice this one is special colored. So that's a convention. If you do it like this, you can refer to a signal. Then we have state. A state has a name, it has a list of commands, and a list of transitions. The transition is a combination of a condition and the pointer to the next state. So go to is a keyword there. And you see that's a cross-reference. A condition itself is an event. An event could prove if a signal is set to a Boolean value, so if it's true or false, and depending on that, it can lead to an outcome that we go to the next state. And there is a combination possible that you combine different events with an and then, of course, you have formulated your condition. Last thing that I want to go through is a command. A command is able to set a signal with very easy construct here. We have true or false Boolean, very easy. So not really surprising. Of course, we have to generate out of the grammar or infrastructure. You're already used to that when you're used to XText. So we are good to go. But now let's have a look at the different things that are new. So you can see there is this IDE plugin, and there are several things generated inside there. It's about a parser, and it's about content assist parser that's now completely UI independent. We can reuse that for web integration. One other thing is the web plugin, and that is more interesting now. What we have there is several classes. One class is a server launcher. The other one is a servlet. And we have a web module and a web setup. What is it about? Okay, you might guess. Server launcher is about running a server. And as Jan already said, it's a Jetty server, but you're free to use other application servers like Tomcat. That means we are no longer Eclipse dependent. So we want to run that on port 8080. And we are waiting for someone who presses enter to end up the server. By the way, this is written in extend. Then we have a servlet. A servlet has a method to init the complete servlet. And here we have a web setup. And that's different to the normal setup. What we do there is we register, and the name, you might guess that from the name of the method. We register EMF, the EMF models, and we create an injector. We are using dependency injection for XText, so why not using it for web integration too? And yeah, the rest you know, but the only difference is that we have the possibility to have a web module. And in this web module, you can bind custom implementations for only your web integration. But this doesn't mean that you have to implement everything twice, or maybe 3 times if you use IntelliJ as well. You can reuse the stuff that you have already written in the runtime module. And then we have the web setup. The only thing that is different is that we are using the web module there in combination with the runtime module. This means everything you have bound in the web module together with the stuff you have bound in the runtime module is together the injector. Okay. So let's have a look at the stuff that we have generated. We already have done that. And now let's start the server and have a look what's going on there. So Jetty's up. We have content assist for all language. That's not really surprising. I already showed that. I will try to use an example. Oh, that's wrong Eclipse. So I have an example there. And you will see different things here. What we have is, by the way, this framework that we use currently is ACE. That's the default. If you do nothing, that you end up with ACE. That's not really a bad decision.
So that's a JavaScript editor for framework.
Right. And you can see already that we have syntactic highlighting here. So the stuff that you're used to from the Eclipse IDE. And you can see that comments are differently highlighted like keywords. So we have cross-references. You can see here content assist will show up the stuff that makes a state. And we have 2 different states, state 1 and state 2, and we can refer to them. And there are other things that are working for different platforms, and we will come to that in a minute. I would like to customize one thing. I would like to customize validation. Okay, there is already a stub generated for that. Just I want to show that validations that you formulated in the runtime plugin are invoked here in the web integration, and annotations are shown, and error markers are shown. And yeah, for that, I would like to just point to the different services that we already offer. So we have services for content assist. You have already seen that. There is a service for formatting. We have generator service. We will see that in an example. Hovers, We will see that in the example mark occurrences. We have seen that in the web editor already. Persistence, that is something that you can store your DSL somewhere on the server. Syntax coloring, that means semantic coloring, not lexical one. Lexical coloring is done on client side, so we generate JavaScript. I will show you that in a minute. And this one is used by the corresponding backend, ACE, Orion, or Code Mirror. We will, after the demo, we will present what different kinds of backends we can use. And of course, we have validation. So let's get back to our example. When we have a deeper look into the web project, you will notice beside the classes that are already mentioned, there is a web root. And not really surprising, there is an example page that we want to use. And you can see that in this case, we're using ACE. And the only thing that we did is we established a div with the ID XText editor. And with that, we're good to go with that example to have the editor in place. Other thing is we have CSS file where we can change the highlighting. And we have other resources that are generated, and I already mentioned that there is lexical highlighting. And this lexical highlighting is done on client side. So you can see here, for ACE, we use regular expressions. And this is generated out of the grammar. And you can see here, keywords are just a list of keywords, and then they are highlighted in the color you choose.
You don't have to write that. That's automatically generated.
That's generated. Don't be scared by regular expression. There's I/O. Okay, validation. So I have prepared that already. So in the runtime plugin, you will find a stub for validation. And within that, you have to create methods. Name doesn't matter. But the important thing is that you have a check on the methods. So if we take the example here, we have two different checks that we want to have. One is only input signals are allowed for read access. That means if we use a signal inside of an event in our language, that means it's read only. The other thing is, if we use a signal in the command, that means I want to set the value of the signal, then it should be write access. So the difference is in an event, only input signals are allowed, and in a command, only output signals are allowed. So let's have a look how that behaves in the web editor. For that, we start up the server launcher again. I would like to copy that because so far it's not persistent. And now you can see if I change signal X to output, we will get annotations there, and it erases the error that we have written in the validation. And of course, we have error markers here. And you can hover over it and get the error message.
So that's just a plain old way to write validation in XText. That's nothing different, but it's automatically picked up by the web editor.
And that's true for other services as well. So let's come to an example. It's written with Orion in this case. And here we have exactly the same validation. But we added semantic highlighting. So the only thing that we have to do to make that happen is we have to write a semantic highlighting calculator. So those of you who already worked with XText know that. So what we have to do is write something like this one. This goes through all the objects and defines what should be highlighted in which way. And normally in Eclipse, You have a highlighting configuration where you say which identifier, and this one here is an identifier for a special coloring, should be picked or is defined, and we can pick that in the calculator. In this case, we make it very easy. Because we're in the web, we can just do that by CSS. And what we have to do is we have to go to the IDE plugin, because this is something that is true for different platforms. And in this case, I prepared that already. So I can copy it here. But this will not work, because we have to register our custom implementation. And that is done by the web module. I have prepared that as well. Just overwrite it. So you will see here, like you know it from XText, you have your module, and within the module you have bind methods. And what you have to do is you have to establish a method that begins with bind. After that, the rest is your decision. And you have to handle back something that implements an interface that you want to customize. In this case, it's the asymmetric highlighting calculator, and we have a custom implementation for that. We've already seen that. So what we do there is we highlight the name of a signal, the signal that is used inside a command, and we highlight a signal that is used inside an event in a different color. So we can see here that semantic highlighting is done in the web. Validation is working. So that's the two services that we can use. There are several others that are already mentioned, and you are completely free to build new ones. It's not so much code that you have to write in JavaScript. There is, of course, some code that you have to write in JavaScript to establish a new service, but it's not that hard. And a lot of services are already there. So maybe we should have a look at the different services that we already have. So one thing that you can do is you can save your files. So if I make a change here and I delete this one, I can save it. And when I reload the page, it's still the same content. That is one service that you can use. You can revert changes. So if I establish a new state, and I want to revert that, that's absolutely possible. One other thing is you can have the stateless integration. We've already seen that, where you don't store your file on the server, and you don't store the state of the file on the server. And then one thing that is, for me, sometimes very cool to show, it's a live code generator. So on the right-hand side, you can see the different signals, and you see the different states. And if I define a new one, it gets immediately generated. And the cool thing about that is when you have implemented a code generator in XText, you can directly use it here, and there is a service communication, like we have it in Eclipse. When you save, the code generator gets invoked, and here it's when you stop typing for a while, then the code generator is invoked, and it will directly communicate with the server, send the necessary deltas or the complete document to the server. Out of that, the server will create the AST. It will go through the code generator, and then we have something that we can bring to the client. And in this case, it's an HTML web page that we transmit to the client, and the client can decide to do whatever. In earlier prototypes, we have done something like invoking classes inside of the web and show the console, so you see you can do whatever you like. So we have spoken about different platforms, and one last thing that I want to show is maybe you know Xbase already, and it was not that easy to bring that to the web. So what that means is Xbase is a library expression language that is shipped with XText, And you can reuse that to formulate expressions in a real easy way. You can customize that, and we had a tutorial this morning about it. Beside that, you can have references to Java, and I would like to show you that the content assist in this case, let's do that here. Content assist is aware of Java classes, so you have to, we are nearly over. We have to formulate a class path that the web server is aware of, and because of that, it's absolutely possible to refer to Java. Besides that, we have bracket matching. Okay, that is something special from Orion. That's not true for ACE or CodeMirror. And I just want to show the rest. So ACE, you have already seen that because we used that in the wizard. One thing about that is we have mark occurrences. That is not true for Orion, maybe in the future. And CodeMirror, you see they all look really similar. And CodeMirror provides mark occurrences also. Okay, that was our demo, and we are really good in time.
Cool.
So let's go back to the slides. And I have to handle over my tie.
The tie, yeah. Otherwise, I feel naked. Okay, so what you just seen is what you will get with XText 2.9. We have we support three front ends in this case. Front ends, JavaScript editing frameworks. That's ACE, CodeMirror with the Babu, and Orion. And they kind of behave a little bit differently because they're very different internally, but we're trying to make them all the same for you. There are a couple of services executed at the client, such as syntactical highlighting, and that's different for all these platforms. And okay, syntactical highlighting is something that can be generated quite good, so that's nothing you have to do. Also, sometimes bracket matching. But for more elaborate services, of course, server communication is needed because we don't do any heavy logic in JavaScript. That's still Java-based because the entire XText code base is based on Java. We don't have any plans to rewrite that in JavaScript. And on the server side, we offer a couple of services from validation content assist to others like hover generator, and you've seen a lot of these. And most of them can be configured by single sourcing. So you can reuse the same implementation for Eclipse and IDEA, which is pretty cool. So this is all for our presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe we have time for one or two questions. Do you have any questions? Yes, please.